Hey everybody, welcome to the Patronarchy. This is a podcast where we talk about the customers who didn't want good service, they wanted good servitude. And with me today to tell their tales of the people they wish they could forget but probably never will is the man from the Magic Trade Day channel. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Darin.
Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Thank you for taking the time out to do this.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here and talk to you about all the stuff that's going on, and hopefully there's some interesting stories that you can take from all this. And
oh, dude, I mean, we've all the people I've found on before, just like there's never an episode where nothing makes me go, oh, I'm never not gonna forget that. You know, like that's gonna stick with me for a while. So yeah, no, man, I'm expecting good stuff. So let's talk. You're in a band called Guides, right?
Right.
And you just opened for Taproot the other night at the time of this recording.
We did, yes. We just opened for Taproot. It was their first show in 6 years that they played in Pittsburgh. So this is like the kickoff to their tour.
Sweet.
And we got to open, and they also asked us to come up on stage and sing one of their new songs with them, as well as the singer came up on stage with us when we covered a Limp Bizkit song. So he sang on one of those tracks too when we were playing.
Oh man, that sounds like a ton of fun.
It was great. It felt like a party from start to finish because, you know, regardless of who went on at what time, it was just like, it didn't even feel like it was like you were just going to see one band. It was like even if you went to see like the opening act, which was us, or the second band or third, you know, the headliner, everyone felt like it was just one big awesome show.
Oh, that's great, man. Yeah, because on a previous episode we had Eve on, who's an audio engineer, and they've worked on a ton of bands and musicians all around here in Pittsburgh, and they had some horror stories. So I'm glad your show went well.
Yes, actually, the funny story was a couple nights before, there was this band Powerman 5000, and they kept telling us, they were like, yeah, man, there's a noise ordinance out at this venue that we played at. So because it's in a neighborhood, it's like in a weird like kind of neighborhood, but they said, yeah, they kept telling us like, hey man, can you crank up the volume? So they kept at the show, they were like, hey, we can only keep the volume at a certain level, which I'm fine with. I don't want to blow out my ears.
Oh, totally.
But Powerman 5000 wanted to get that power, you know, that was they thought they were on stage at Star Lake, but in a suburban, you know, bowling alley / concert venue in South Hills.
Now I'm just picturing like a band full of like Tim Allens from Home Improvement, like more power. Oh,
that's right. What was the name of their brand? Binford. Man, that shows me how long I haven't seen the Home Improvement. So,
dude, if I hadn't just watched a retrospective on YouTube, I probably would have forgotten too. So don't be too hard on yourself. But yeah, man, dude, I'm so glad this show went well. And if people want to check out Guides, where can they find Guides?
So if you can go on Spotify, you can search Guides. Guides Official on Instagram and Facebook. You can search Guides, and the website I think is guidesofficial.com. I'll have to verify that, but we'll put the website so people know where to go.
All right, nice, man. Nice.
We're coming a CD release show coming out in a CD coming out September 1st, and then the CD release show September 2nd. So gearing up for just releasing some music and keeping things going.
Awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Another thing you're known for is like you got Magic Trade Day.
Yes.
You know, on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram, doing fun comedy sketches and bits.
Yeah.
And we have you to thank for to bring Fred Durst back into the public consciousness.
That's right.
So where did like your Fred Durst character? Where did you? At what way did you like? You know what? I'm bringing back Fred Durst. How'd that happen?
So in October, it was Halloween, and I was like, man, what am I going to go as for Halloween this year? Because I've done previous Halloweens, I've done like all these awesome costumes. I went as Powdered Toast Man. I went as, you know, that was probably the ultimate costume to kind of create that. But Powdered Toast Man, I went as the Clockwork Orange guy. You know, I mean, just a lot of great Edward Scissorhand. But then this year I was like, man, I really don't have a lot of time to like, I actually a couple costumes that I was thinking about doing, which I didn't do. I was like, I wanted to do Leisure Suit Larry, the video game, but I was like, no one's going to know who that is. So I was like, you know what? It's easy because I was like, I can just shave my beard into this early 2000s goatee, put on a backwards hat, and then buy this puffy jacket. I have the Adidas shoes, and I was like, that would be a great costume because it's simple, and those are usually the better ones. So Halloween last year, I was like, that's the costume. So I went out to a bunch of places. H&M had the puffy jacket.
Oh, okay, okay.
Somehow, some way, I got the puffy jacket. That is essentially, if you watch the Limp Bizkit Nookie video, that's the look that I'm impersonating.
Oh yeah.
So I said, oh, okay, this will be funny. Go as him for Halloween. And then from there, I have these tapings for my comedy show, Magic Trade Day, every month. And I said, you know what, I'm just going to go on and do a bunch of sketches. Well, the whole tie-in with the band Taproot is years and years ago, they did, somebody leaked this voicemail message that Fred Durst left the singer of Taproot about not signing with his label, which was Interscope Flip Records or whatever. And he goes, Steven, you fucked up, and you ruined your career before it ever gets started. And it was like this tirade of like Fred Durst, laying into the singer of Taproot, saying they screwed up their career. That was right before they released their hit album, but it's funny that it got released and it became this infamous voicemail message. So the bit that I did was I said, you know what, I'm gonna do this bit where I'm gonna call the singer of Taproot, but like make it like goofy, where it says Fred Durst calls the guy from Taproot. So his voicemail message says, it goes, the guy from Taproot can't come to the phone right now, so please leave your blah blah. And then basically the character, my impersonation, will just like ramble a bunch of stuff, and he's basically like just saying a bunch of lyrics. Like he was like, yeah, Steven Richards, you got to look into these eyes and see the size of the flames. And the other thing that I do with these sketches is I film it on a green screen. So a lot of these areas that he's at. So I'm standing outside of this Get-Go in Lawrenceville.
I've seen that, yeah.
Which was a meme or it was this event like years and years ago where somebody started this thing where they said,
oh my God, yeah.
Limp Bizkit was supposed to, like, it was a joke that they said Limp Bizkit is going to be playing at the Get-Go in Lawrenceville. It was like this gas station tour. But I think the original one was somebody created a Facebook event that said Limp Bizkit was going to play at the Sunoco in like Ohio or something. So it was like this whole like joke. And it went viral. So people actually thought that Limp Bizkit was going to play at the gas station. So Pittsburgh must have did their own one, and they said it was the Get-Go in Lawrenceville. So I have him like at the Get-Go in Lawrenceville, like, positioned in front of different things. He's like standing on one of the cars and calling Steven Richards on the phone. So then after that, it just spiraled into more like sketches where like I just have him calling like different people. So he calls up like Owen Wilson. He calls up Ben Stiller. He calls up Travis Barker. There's like, newer sketches where he's just like calling up random people and just leaving like voicemail messages like, hey, this is Fred Durst and blah, blah, blah. I think you're dumb diddy dumb. And just, he just says a bunch of lyrics that are like tied to his songs, but it's a bunch of nonsense. So that's the whole thing. And it just became this thing. And, last November, originally, now taking it back to the origin of the Fred Durst thing, one of my first sketches ever that I recorded on Magic Trade Day was this thing where I would touch different things, and it would like say, so one was a Michael Jackson jacket that I have. So if I would like touch it, it would go, hee, 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 whatever, and that was the whole sketch. Then I did one with the New York Yankees hat. So I like was at the background was like me at Lids at the mall. So I went up to touch the hat, and it would go like, yeah, or it would go, check. And then like, it would like, and then it would be like, Mrs. Aguilera. So that one, I posted it last year on Instagram, and it just went crazy viral. It was just like, it picked up, I think altogether, 500,000 views organically. I didn't have to sponsor it, but it was like one of those things where like you go on your Instagram and it just started spiraling. Like every day I would come back and there'd be like 100 people that would like this, 100 people. And these weren't fake people. It was like, you saw like it went from the US to South America to Russia, all these people.
Dude.
So that was like one of those moments where I was like, man, I think now I guess I've become an official Fred Durst impersonator, which I've changed. Like people said, you're not Fred, you're Fraud Durst instead of Fred Durst. So that's, basically the persona. But that's where it all started. And then the guys from Taproot, they loved it. They said this is the most hilarious stuff you've done, and so I just kind of embellished that. And then yesterday at the show, I dressed up as Fred Durst, and just kind of went all in on that. Or like I was up on stage as Fred Durst and just being that character in live, live on stage. So,
dude, that's great, man. Congratulations. Like,
Thank
funny
you.
stuff. One last question about that, and then we'll move on to the meat of the podcast.
For sure.
But, if Fred Durst ever said, "I want to meet you. I want to see you face to face," would you accept it, or would you be like, "I think I'm good"?
Well, this is a funny story because I told you guys prior to this, but like so my dad's recovering from surgery right now, and he's taking like the oxycodone and something. And my mom just told me, like, we were just having lunch. She's like your dad just said, you better be careful because Fred Durst is a gangster. And I was like, he is not a gangster. Like, I didn't get to tell my dad that, but he thinks like Fred Durst is like this like bad actor, character. And I'm just like, not at all. Like, this isn't Suge Knight. We're not talking about Suge Knight. You don't got to worry about that. But I think if it would probably be like one of those moments. The way that I take this is like, I forget who the guy on SNL was who did the Joe Pesci show.
Oh, Jim Brewer.
Jim Brewer. So there was that moment where like he's Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro. I don't know who's impersonating Robert De Niro, but I always say it's like that moment where like the real Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro show up, and then they go, he's like, "Is this?" And then the real Joe Pesci was like, "Is this how I really act?" Like, you make me sound like I'm a blabbering idiot or whatever. Like and then like Jim Brewer was like, he's like, "Mr. Pesci, I'm sorry," and then he hits him with a baseball bat. So I'd say like it would be that kind of moment where you see the real person you're impersonating, and you could kind of I would say that would be like the ultimate like full circle where like you're doing an impersonation of someone and the real person's there, and it's like you're looking in a mirror. Or not. Somebody said, I posted a picture from last night from the show, and they said, "Man, Fred Durst lost some weight." I was like, yeah, I guess to be a method Fred Durst, I would have to start eating like, a little bit, like some hamburgers and, just not doing P90X every morning. That would be the route to take. But yeah, I think that would be an awesome thing to kind of meet the real Fred Durst, because the only time that I've ever seen Limp Bizkit was I think I was in 9th grade or 10th grade, but they came to the Civic Arena, which was, you could see how long ago that was. It was at the Civic Arena on the Limptropolis tour. And I just remember as like a young kid, like 16 years old, I was like, "Oh man, Fred Durst!" Like he came out into the crowd like before the show, and I just remember like Fred. I was trying to like signal him, and he just stood up and gave everyone the middle finger, and I was like, ah. And I just remember like he was on stage during the show, and like he was like coming over to the area we are, and I gave him the finger, and he just like looked at me like, and I was like, "Well, you gave me the finger earlier, so now I'm giving you the finger." So
turn around, fair play.
That's right. Yeah, a middle finger for a middle finger, buddy. But yeah, I think that's like the ultimate. It was when you actually get to meet the person in real life that you've made fun of, and they're like, they take light of what you're doing and they have fun with it. So like with Taproot, for instance, some people are just like, "Ah, man, I don't like to be made fun of," or whatever, then they're kind of like, but I think when they can laugh at themselves, that's where it, they get the joke.
Oh yeah. If you can't laugh at yourself every once in a while, you're kind of screwed.
That's right.
But anyway, we must move away from the Durst.
Sure.
And Darin, tell us about your encounters with the Patronarchy.
Okay, so we're talking about jobs that I had in the past that were like kind of like my moving up the ladder, like I'd say.
Whatever jobs you want to talk about, whatever nasty customers or weirdo customers.
I think it's like, we start back at like the very beginning. It's like when I first got my job, the first job I ever had was I worked in a movie theater. That was like the first one ever. And it was like one of those jobs where you're like, okay, I'm just getting into the workforce and I want to make some money because I want to go do things, and I can't rely on my parents to like give me money all the time. So I wanted to be more independent and be able to afford things. So working at the movie theater, it was, it wasn't that hard of a job, but then it started to become like a ridiculous thing because the people, the managers would be like, you got to go in there and you got to pick these booger napkins out of the things. And I was like, uh, I'm not getting paid like, you're like a supervisor. I was like, you guys can go in and pick out the booger napkins, or they weren't giving us like gloves to like pick these out. So I was like, I don't want to do that kind of thing. And then it got to the point where they were having me clean toilets. And I was like, I'm not a janitor. So I was like, that was like one of those jobs where it was like, you start, that's like the bottom. Like, you're like, okay, I got to get out of this. So then I went to, I worked at Gadzooks at the mall, if you remember that store. It was like hey, let's sell like some Fox Racing and also like Jenko jeans, and then we also have like these graphic T-shirts. It was a weird like if you take Spencer's and mix it with I can't what other, but they sold like Echo and like all this other stuff. So it was like they would sell like the new metal attire, I guess you could say. So yeah, that was one of those jobs where you got to see a lot of different characters because you worked at a mall and you're there, you're folding clothes. I think Gadzooks was one of those stores where you got to see a lot of people, interact with a lot of people, and just general public. That was like one of those things where you're just like, "Hi, welcome to Gadzooks," and you're the greeter, and but I'd say like in terms of like that job, it was. You still weren't making a lot of money to like justify like the long hours, and you want to try to like work your way up, not work as hard and burn yourself out.
Right.
But after that, I worked at probably I would say the worst job was telemarketing. Now that was one of those ones where like you had to get two jobs I worked in college. One was telemarketing, one was working grounds crew at Alcoma Country Club at the time. I think it's called something else now, but that was a golf club. But telemarketing is probably one of the more harder jobs that I had, and you're trying to sell credit cards. Like you're selling a credit card to somebody. Hey, you have the script you're trying to sell people, and then you have two rebuttals, and some people were just like, no, and just like hung up the phone. You're like I don't know what they're trying, but then this one, I remember like some lady, she was like had to be like 90 years old. I was like, I feel so bad selling this lady that's 90 years old this credit card, and you have to say, well, ma'am, there's no risk right now, like you just have to sign up and blah blah blah. But it was like one of those things where they were like, you got to sell it. So like one time, like this lady was about to back out like at the end, and I started talking over this woman, and they suspended me for 2 weeks, and I was like, you trained me to do that. You trained me to like get the sale.
You made me what I am.
Yeah, you made me what I am. This, slimy snake oil salesman. So selling credit cards for Bank of America. That was like the whole job. So that was like one of those jobs where I was like, man, like I can't do this. This is like I got to get a regular job. But raking sand at a golf course over the summer, like you had to be on the course by like I had to be there like 5:30 in the morning. You would work till 2 p.m., but you'd have to get out there. You have to rake the sand traps. You had this thing called a sand pro. It was like this thing that you would drive around, and there was rakes on the back that would like lower down, and then you would just kind of do donuts in the sand trap. Then you have to get out, and then you have to rake it. And that was one of those jobs that was like, man, you can't stay out late. You got to wake up early. And like the people there, like it was cool because I was working with my friends. There was 2 other guys that I worked with, but like the guys that were managing, they were just like, ugh, like, you gotta get out there. You gotta, like look like you're busy. And I'm just like, why do I gotta look like I'm busy when I got all my work done? So that was like, kind of another like, that was like a blue collar type of like job where you say like, if I get all my work done, why can't I just like take a break and hang out? You gotta look like you're busy. That's not a reward for getting your work done. Keep working.
Yeah, no. Oh God. I remember. I used to work at a movie theater too. I've thought about it plenty of times because I worked there for so long. And sometimes I would just like to look busy. I would just like I'd be like sweeping the same spot over and over again just to. Oh man, I remember this one time. I was working box office,
Uh-huh.
right? And this family came up, mom, dad, two little boys, and they asked for like 4 tickets to Deadpool. And I looked at them and I was like, "Hi, just to give you a heads up, Deadpool's rated R." And they're like, "Rated R? It's a superhero film." I'm like, and I had to explain to them who Deadpool was,
Yeah.
like, if they just saw a superhero poster and like, "Oh, I could take our," and they were young kids, they weren't even
That's
like high
right.
school age, right? And I had to explain to
Right.
them like, why is it rated R? And I'm like, for all the reasons
That's
a movie
right.
will be rated R, and they're
There's a
like,
lot of sex references,
exactly.
you know.
And they kept saying like, "What do you mean for everything rated R?" I mean, like, there's sex, there's gore, there's
Yeah.
language, and
That's right.
I
Someone
tried to
gets their
explain it
head
to them.
chopped off. Yeah.
I wasn't gonna stop them. I mean, I watched Terminator when I was 6. I'm like, whatever. So I'm not gonna judge them. And then, they didn't. It didn't. They didn't get it. Like, I explained it all, and then they went into the and I'm like, they went into the theater. They came, and then, like, right as it began, and they came back like 20 minutes later, and like, we want refunds. And they said that looking at me as if I didn't thoroughly explain what they were taking their children to.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
did you
you're
ever
like,
did you ever have issues like that at the theater where some like a particular situation where some parent like gave you crap because of a kids movie or something, or
that's right. No, see, I didn't have to deal with that because I was the usher, so it was always like you have to get in there. I would always watch the end credits to like whatever movie that was playing, so I didn't deal with like the public per se. But I can't remember what the movie at that time was, but I just remember I kept catching the end credits of the same movie over and over and over again. I think it was like, let's see, when was that? If I was like 15 years old, that would be, what year was that? 2000, probably like 2000, 2001. I'm trying to
yeah.
think what movie was like pop. But I just remember they had these like movie tunes playing, and they kept
Oh.
playing like this Stone Temple Pilots
Right.
Monday back from the dead. They kept like, yeah, that was like the song they kept playing over and over and over and over and over and over again. But yeah, I can't remember what was the movie of that time period. But I kept, oh, I got to see the end credits to this movie again and again. But
Oh, I
yeah,
know they had me usher a lot too. Like, whenever I got boxed off, I was like, "Oh, thank God, I can just sit here and sell
yeah,
people tickets." But then, like, yeah, no, I feel, yeah. Like, I had to clean up some nasty theaters. Oh, yeah. Oh God, the Hannah Montana movie was a nightmare.
that's right,
I'm
that's
just
right.
bringing another
No,
musician back from the past.
you think that like when you work that job, like I was like, oh yeah, I'm working a movie theater, I can watch any movie whenever I want, and then like at the end of the day, you're like, I don't want to come back here and watch a movie because I've had it.
I feel you. I feel you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, what customer do you remember from any of those jobs? Was there a particular customer that just like they were mean, they were damn near demonic, and they just tore into you?
Well, I'm trying to think. Probably now there was a time. So right before I started working in my first professional career, I was at Circuit City.
Oh, okay, I remember.
Before Circuit City went down, it was like the year that I got the job there is when they decided to go bankrupt. But I think somebody
You were there for the grand finale.
I was there for the grand finale. That's right. I went down with the ship, and that was like. But I think there was a time when like somebody came in and they were just like, they were just like, oh, this is how it's advertised, and blah 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 blah. And at that point I was just like, just you could talk to the manager. I was like, I don't want to deal with this. So I think it was always those times where like if it's an irate customer, you're not getting paid the rate to like, deal with it. You just pass it along. Here you go. And let that guy deal with it. So that was and then also the telemarketing. That you had to deal with irate people you were selling to because they
Oh,
don't
totally.
want to be sold to. So those,
Yeah. They want to
those-
get back to watching The Price is Right. They
that's
wanna
right.
go
Those
about their day.
people. I mean, there was sometimes people that would like lecture you, like, "What are you calling here at this hour?" and blah 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 blah. I'm just like, all right, thank you for your time, blah 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 blah, and then you have to like read the script, and then hang up. So
Thank you for your time, sir. I hope you had a pleasant conversation, but I'm going to leave you be. And only
that's right.
Yeah, I love like. Here's the thing: we all we all get annoyed by getting those kind of calls,
Yeah.
especially. But it's just like I think people are like, hey, we don't want to be calling you either, man. I got my gas bill to pay and stuff
Yeah,
like
that's
that. I'm
right.
like, so if you're not going to buy, fine, but just be like, no, and then say goodbye. That's
That's
it. Although
right.
you got to do, you can go back to your day playing.
All right.
I don't know, cricket. I don't know what people are doing nowadays.
So the funny thing about the telemarketing job was there was like I was trying to like study how these other people were like you would get more money if you sold like 3 sales a day or whatever.
Oh, commission.
Commission,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So it was funny how like I was like my friend like he would make fun of me because he said like the one time like I started talking more like this, like, "Hi, this is Darin DiNapoli, and this is, we're here," and I was like talking real low and like just like trying to be like more like calm with my voice because I was, of course, I have this voice like, "Hi, I'm Darin DiNapoli," and I like this TV show announcer like calling them up, and I would be like real loud, and then some days I'd be like, "Hi, this is Darin DiNapoli," and I'm like, blah 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 blah, and it was just so he was just like, he's like, "What are you doing, man? Like, why are you sounding like you're just like kind of like." I was like, I was like, it was working for that person over there, but then you learn that like stuff like that doesn't work for everybody. You just don't. I was like, oh, maybe if I have a more of a soothing delivery.
Yeah. You're trying to read the room that you're not even in.
That's right. Yeah. And I was like, it didn't work. I kept. It was like, hang up the phone, hang up the phone. There'd be like a montage of me like doing these different things throughout that job, and then like hang up the phone, hang up the phone, hang up the phone. But that was I would say that memory of like jobs that were just like, that was one of those things where you were working so much and you wouldn't like the money that you would make wouldn't amount to like the would you say the
amount of effort you
the amount of effort and the mental anguish from the customers that you would deal with as a result. So
dude, I'm my current job, I work security, and I'm not going to get into all the details because I was boring Sarony over there with it earlier.
Yeah.
But there are some days where like I'm so like I literally now have, I'm not even joking, I feel like this is something out of a movie.
Yeah.
I literally keep a supply of chocolate bars in my work locker, and then if I'm having a shit day, I will go to my locker, grab a chocolate bar, and then hang out behind the building and eat a chocolate bar for like 5-10 minutes just to fucking calm down. And I'm just. And and it's like one of those like fit bars, so I'm like, I'm like, even though I'm putting sugar in my body, it's like good sugar. I'm just like, I need this chocolate.
Yes.
But some days I'll have a good. I had a day recently where, I work at a library, so. And it was a crazy day because it's like a neighborhood library, so everybody comes in and brings their crap and their troubles. You don't think a library can get crazy. It can,
right,
especially when the library is the neighborhood hangout for all the teenagers because there's nothing in the neighborhood to do.
Yeah.
So they just come in and play on the computers and whatever.
Right.
I was watching. I was like, oh god. And then we had this cute little girl who came in with like her mom and dad, and she was walking around. She's like 4 or 5, really young, and she just came in. She saw me and she just gave me a high five. And god damn it, I needed that high five. I just needed something wholesome to get me through the rest of the day, and I was out of chocolate bars. So I really needed that. So I feel you, man. Because we've talked about this so many times in previous episodes, how like they were just, customers will just make you feel like they ripped your soul out like Mortal Kombat or something like that.
Right.
One of these days on this show, I would like to have a psychologist or a therapist come in and talk about the psychological ramifications of negative workplace. I think it'd probably be depressing, but informative.
Oh, for sure. I think that, that's the thing. Like when I working at the advertising agency was one of those environments. I can't say, that wasn't a bad job per se because I was gaining a lot of experience learning about all the different aspects of like the environment which I ultimately ended up in, but I could tell that it was like everybody in an organization in that regard is the corporate structure. It's cutthroat. People are like, there's not everyone's going to get along. I'd say, the reason why I stayed at that one job where I worked at the agency for so long is because there was a lot of good people I generally liked, being there and talking to these people. But then there was like this small, like 1 or 2% of people that like, just for some reason didn't like you or just didn't get along, and you're just like, why do you have to make my life miserable for so that's the thing, like sometimes it's that element of like the people there that are making your life miserable because they're trying to take your job or they're trying to get you out. It's almost like I feel like it is like the Game of Thrones. They're trying to get you out so they can climb the ladder and be higher up, but those are the things I feel like in the way that makes a job shitty once you bypass the, like, I'm working this crappy job, as a, theater usher. You get to another level of, like, shitty job. Well, the shitty part of the job is dealing with the shitty people at the agency or professional corporate job that you're at,
Oh, no, that's definitely worth, like, maybe, well, I don't have the customers near me, but now Ted's over here. He's working the shift today. Great.
Yeah,
You know,
right. Yeah.
people just driving you nuts. Or like I remember. Oh, yeah. Going back to the movie theater, one last time. I'm such a broken effing record. We had the butter pump to put butter
Oh,
on.
okay.
And I was one day the boss told me, "Hey, I need you to clean the butter pump like in and out." And I was
Oh.
like, "So disassemble it." And I'm like, "I've never disassembled it before." Well, he's like, "You got to figure it out because I got to go like do the schedule." I'm like, "Okay." So luckily, because I grew up with Legos, I was able to figure out how to break it down and put it back together. Wasn't that difficult. But then the problem arose was I was the only one on the staff who knew how to take it apart and put it back together.
Oh man.
And every once in a while, the actual pump mechanism, the thing you push down on, with one bolt, just that this one like bolt would come loose and it wouldn't work properly. And all you had to do was just like screw this one bolt on.
Yeah.
But nobody did it. I'd be in the middle of cleaning a theater that just was packed, nacho trays all over the joints, the Bud Light cans that the one dude would sneak in, and they would call me on, like, we had these little rays, they would call me on the rays like, "Vincent, can you come fix the butter machine?" And I'm like, I'm in the middle of Iron Man 2 cleanup. Can you do it yourself? Like, I forget. And it was like that for months. They would call me and they were like, "I've shown you all of you, 5 times. I like, and then finally I had a new manager joined on, and like a week into their job, apparently that people had told them the butter machine's super complicated, and they're like, "Only Vincent knows how to do it." And I'm like, so she's like, "Come and show me how to do it." And I showed her the one thing that always came loose, and I'm not joking, she was almost on the floor laughing at how easy it was. And I was like, I felt so vindicated. I felt so vindicated. Oh my God.
So I think one other thing I gotta say is that, like, since I graduated from like the agency world to now working for myself, when you work for yourself, you have a lot of different types of jobs. You don't just work like the big jobs, and sometimes the bigger jobs are more like stressful than the smaller jobs, but it's like you're kind of working these little like oddball jobs every single day because your client list changes all the time. So I think the one job I remember working, this is a funny story about this guy. He thought he was like this like marketing genius, and it was like the macaroni and cheese festival, like, and he was like the macaroni and cheese guy. Like he's like, and like back like where we were like getting ready, he was like trying to like, he was talking to me about all these great ideas he had, and he's like, "Listen to this idea." Like, first of all, the guy looked like what's his name? Who's the actor that played Fonzie? What's his name?
Oh, Henry Winkler.
He looked like Henry, like Henry Winkler. Like if they need Henry Winkler to fall off a horse, like he was like that guy.
Okay.
So like he's not Henry Winkler, but he's the guy that probably would, like, if you see him from the back or whatever, like from a distance, like, "Oh, it's Henry Winkler." Nope. So anyway, this guy, he like starts talking to me, and he like thinks he's like this genius, and he's like telling me all these ideas, and he's like, "Listen," he's like, "I got this idea for this wing festival. It's called Wing-a-Ding-Ding." And you're just like sitting, you're like standing there like, with this guy, and you're just like, "Yeah, man, like that's such a good idea." Like you're trying to be like encouraging, like, you're just like deep down inside, you're like, Wing-a-Ding-Ding is not a good name for a festival, man. I don't know where you're coming from, but I wouldn't name my wing festival Wing-a-Ding-Ding. So
that sounds like a jingle for like a chicken place back in the 50s. Wing-a-ding-ding, where the chicken is the best. Like some crap like that.
That, and then also before this is, like I said, transitioning between like college and my other job was I worked at KDK commercial production as a freelancer.
Oh, okay.
So we would work on a lot of different types of jobs, but one of them was this. I always go back to this one where this plumbing company. This is probably a funny story. Like I said, this guy, it was called the Warehouse on Wheels. I don't know if it still exists, but the guy that was like there, with the crew, and they said, "We want to do the scene in the basement where like the plumber is like putting the pipe snake down the drain. There's a camera on the pipe snake," and said, "But we want like the mother and the kid to be like sitting like off camera, and then like we want the plumber to pull the pipe snake out and like kind of show them like." And like the producer was like, he was like horrified, like he just put that down like where there was like shit, and he's like, "You're not going to take the pipe snake out and show it to the kids and the mother like, 'Hey, look at this, kids,' it's like that's that's not reality. So it's like the clients that you deal with.
Right. Yeah.
And,
No one
and
wants to see the meatloaf after it goes through the toilet.
that's right,
Yeah.
exactly. And the other thing about that job was like the guy that the owner of the company was like, hey, it was like raining outside, and the camera guy that I was working under at that time, he goes up to the guy and he's like, yeah, man, he's like, sorry, like we can't shoot, it's in the rain. And the guy was like, the owner was like, hey, he's like, well, my guys work in the rain, why can't you guys work in the rain? So that was like one of those instances where you're just like, we have a expensive equipment that will break, so
Yeah.
I think that's the other thing too, like when you work in production, you're going to work with a lot of different types of personalities. Sometimes, like, even if you think that you're the expert, you have to dumb it down to make people that aren't the expert understand. Like you said, going back to the woman that wanted to buy tickets for the Deadpool thing, it all comes full circle. It's like you know what you're getting into, and you have to like be a good salesman and talker to like convince people to be like, this is the way that I want you to think, because you're making the wrong choice.
Right. Yeah.
So it is talk about psychology. It is a psychological thing where you have to be able to speak the language of the people to be like, oh, you're right, we shouldn't have the guy pull the pipe snake out and show the mother and the kid for the commercial because that's unsanitary.
Yeah. Let's not put literal shit into this commercial.
That's right. So it's like, if you want us to do that, sure, but we're not responsible for what people are going to say about your plumber showing a mother and child a shitty pipe snake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so yeah, there's a lot of stories out there where you're just like, you sometimes just shake your head, and not a lot of public facing. Like I said, like my early on jobs were public facing because that was the only the only way to kind of make money as like a young kid. And like when you get your first job, that's where you begin. But then as you go on, your customers, your people that you deal with that make the job shitty are more of the internal client or your day-to-day client. So you deal with a lot of those stories, at this point in my life. So
Yeah. I mean, I can only imagine some of the things that you've had to do for clients over the years. And
oh yeah,
I think a lot of people already have like this idea in their head of like, oh, this is what the lighting's going to be, this is like the shot's going to be,
yes.
but they have no idea how to do that, or if like the environment they're shooting in, you can do it. Like,
yeah, right.
It's like when you watch like a low budget B movie,
Yes.
and you're watching, and you can kind of tell what the filmmaker had in their head, but at the end of the day,
Right.
It's like, you're not really in a cave. That's just like a tarp you painted on with some like rock dust or
That's
some
right,
crap.
that's
Like,
right.
I know what you're going for, but like, know your means, and having to dumb down stuff for people, like it's
Yeah.
it feels sad sometimes when you got to talk to adults,
Right.
and it'd just be so simpler if some people just admit, I don't know how this works. Please explain it to me. But then they say this and that, and you're like, okay, this is an on button. When you press it,
That's
the
right.
thing works. Like just admit it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's okay to admit that you don't know shit sometimes.
That's
it's
right.
okay. Just admit it and be like, eh.
Well, the thing now, like with the jobs that like I'm working, is a lot of people are more like they can't get it until you actually do the job. So like in terms of like an edit, if you would try to explain it to them, they're not really that savvy to understand like that's what it's going to look like. You sometimes have to do the job and then say this is what it's going to look like. It's not like going out and cutting someone's grass and be like, this is what it's going to look like, so I got to cut your grass and then you decide if you like it or not. It's like, you in editing, like you can afford to do that if it's not a complicated thing, but that's what I mean. It's like sometimes like you have to do it because people are see-say, and until they see it, then they can decide like, yeah, no, that's not what we wanted. But the only difference is now I can charge for that. When I was working at an agency, you couldn't charge for that extra wasted time. I felt like I was wasting my life going back and doing 1,000 revisions. I was like, now if I do 1,000 revisions, I'm like, $signs. Yeah, bring on those revisions. Let me explain, so it's a whole different ballgame when you control the cards, as opposed to working for somebody that's like, sorry, you're on salary. We can work you for like 1,000 hours, and
Right.
not you don't get anything more. Maybe you get a 1% raise every year, and you're just like, what am I working towards? Here, but a high blood pressure, and my doctor telling me you gotta get more cardio or cut back on the alcohol and the cardio. I'm like, Well, if my job wouldn't make me so depressed, you wouldn't be drinking as much as you do, So
Yes, this amount of alcohol intake was not motivated by nothing.
that's right. That's right. Yeah,
And just pop out of thin air.
that's right.
Whatever could it be? Mm.
Well, with me, it wasn't. I didn't drink a lot of alcohol, but it was sushi. I had a sushi.
Oh.
I ate a lot of sushi, which was good but bad at the same time because sushi is, a lot of rice.
Oh yeah. I can't even hold. I don't know what it is. Like I don't eat sushi often, but I'm a binge eater. Like you give
Yeah,
me
I think that's me too.
If
I'm
you
a
give me
binge
a
eater.
if you give me a bag of chips, you better make sure your mind hey, can I get some chips too? Because
Yeah.
if you leave me alone with that bag, it's gonna be dead. And so I try to approach sushi the same way, but every
That's
time
right.
after I get my I'll go like a fifth or sixth piece. I'll be like, crap, no, stop, you
That's
moron. Oh man.
Now I become more of a. I got to say, what's my healthy binge? It's healthy stuff like a nice protein smoothie. If you're gonna go binge on something, you got to go protein smoothie because you just shit it out. So
Oh, I feel you. My wife, she makes herself little protein smoothies, and
yeah.
I probably should get into that. But at the same time, I still got a half a bag of pizza rolls in the freezer,
That's right,
so
that's right.
that's where that ends up. Oh man. Oh shit. Well, anyway, Darin, thank you for coming on the show, man.
You're
It's been a
welcome.
good time. Before we sign off, do you want to plug your stuff again, real
Yeah,
quick?
sure thing. So I work. I have my own video production company called DNAPS Productions. You can go to the website dnappsproductions.com. I have an Instagram channel, DNAPS Productions. I sell photography, Darin DiNapoli, and Magic Tray Day, the comedy show. It's at Magic Tray Day. You can find it on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, basically every Facebook, every social channel. And then my band, Guides, you can find Guides online. Just search Guides Official, and you can come see me play live sometime. So
Awesome. All right, man. Awesome. Thanks again for taking the time to come
Thanks
do
for
this, man. I
having me.
appreciate it. It's a fun time sharing the stories of customers and clients and whatever you got.
for sure,
Yeah.
it was great.
But anyway, everybody, thank you for tuning in and watching or listening. If you have stories that you feel like are relatable and you want to share, please leave them down in the comment section. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. We're on YouTube. You can listen to us on Spotify, iTunes, all the places where you listen to your podcasts. And, of course, we got the social media at the Patronarchy, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Come check us out. I always post the latest episodes or little clips that we'll release or just memes that I think are funny. Whatever comes up next. But anyway, guys, once again, thank you for tuning in. Take it easy.